you've described yourself as a baby homesteader. So this is all new, kind of in the last 2 years. So talk to us about like what is homesteading life, and then what are some good, bad, sad, all the juicy stuff,
Yeah, well, I mean, so I'm coming from a place where basically I didn't, I was always kind of a thoughts or computer guy, and so I really didn't know how to do anything, and I still don't know how to do most things, right? And so taking my basic kind of provisioning for granted that it'll always be there, and so I think part of trying to become more grounded is just trying to be closer to some of my kind of basic sustenance, right? Sure. And food is the obvious, so learning how to grow food. That said, the baby homesteader part is like, I'm not anywhere near some kind of self-sufficiency ideal, and I don't know if self-sufficiency is the ideal in the first place, right? It's interdependence, it's community, but being able to be directly involved with kind of basic practices of providing for yourself, I think to me it's not only kind of like a good idea in terms of like becoming more resilient, for example, but it's also, I would say it's a spiritual process of like, for me, of going from more of a disembodied type person to actually learning how to use my hands, starting to learn how to like build things, grow food. And so for me, it's just like, it's a process, right? And I'm in my second year, it'll probably be 10 or 20 years before I feel like, okay, like I actually know what I'm doing. Right.
You actually feel that imposter syndrome is gone.
Yeah, exactly. And so I say homesteading, that's something I do on Twitter, but for me, it's not like, I hope people don't think that I'm trying to say that like, I could build my own cabin right now and I grow all of my own food, like, or make all my own clothes, et cetera. Like I don't, right? But engaging in that process of learning, learning how to do these kinds of things is, important to me now.
And then you said as well the self-sufficiency, because I think that's an interesting point, is maybe, a lot of people will think that, okay, every single homestead, you just need to be self-sufficient. But then you're kind of saying, well, in a neighborhood or a community kind of aspect, if you have chickens and another person has pigs and another person has whatever, then you can kind of have this local economy kind of moving around, right?
Yeah.
That's more the ideal.
And ultimately, that's kind of my, what I want to help in this bioregion, right? Or, this region or bioregion is, contributing to what I would call a more sustainable, regenerative economy, right? And, for me, the more kind of informal it is, the better. Really, you're kind of outside of kind of the, the legible system, so to speak, right? And and so that's, and how can I contribute? Well, one way I contribute is to actually produce things that I can, use for myself, for my family, but also offer to other people.
And then, so what are some of the, let's go into maybe the, not, I guess, pros and cons and good, bad, ugly, but then what's kind of the biggest thing you've learned about that? And then maybe one thing that you had thought that and then got changed, or something like that.
I think, one thing I've been thinking a lot about recently is, how to maintain fertility on your land when you're growing like annual crops, which it might seem very specific, but it's just been on my mind a lot lately. So for example, I don't want to use fertilizers because I just see, I see it problematic for many different reasons, but not using fertilizers means that I need to, when I grow food, I need to replenish, the fertility. Well, how do you do that? Well, composting and stuff, but then that brings up a whole new set of issues of like, can I produce enough compost? Where am I going to get the biomass from? Am I going to borrow fertility from other parts of the land?
I see.
And then I start thinking about, well, what if I added animals to the system, or or went more in kind of like a perennial direction? What's the optimal balance there? So I think just moving from the realm of kind of like idealism of like, oh, I read a permaculture book, I'm ready to go, or I read an organic gardening book, I'm ready to go, to actually, seeing those constraints for myself and seeing the real challenges with this alternative approach, and it's not it's not a silver bullet solution. Like, it's also difficult, right? And it has its own. And so just realizing that for myself and having to think, try and develop, a solution or a set of responses that is very, you know, appropriate for where I live, right?
Right.
You know, and it'll probably be different from, you know, somebody else who is in a different place and also different sensibility and everything else. So I think that's been, you know, again, going back to the embodiment, just the embodiment or the situatedness of actually, you know, seeing, okay, I tried to grow tomatoes this year and they didn't do well. Well, probably didn't add enough fertility. You know, I wasn't taking care of the soil enough. You know, I wasn't encouraging microbiology enough. Okay, so like that's a very real thing, and I'm you know, really glad that I don't, you know, that I'm not going to starve this year if I can't feed myself, right?
You don't have any tomatoes. Oh no.
Exactly. And so I also see this as kind of like a responsibility of like, you know, the more that I can learn when the stakes aren't very high, if and when the stakes do become higher, you know, I can, you know, it's both good for me, but it's also I can be of help, of service to others.
Sure.
Of like, okay, like all of a sudden more people realize, hey, like many more of us need to grow food. Well, you know, I can help people avoid the, you know, the easiest mistakes. So right.
So if people are coming to you for maybe those easy mistakes, then who are you going to for the harder mistakes and things? Because it's like, are you going to like library resources? Is it people around because I know COVID, like you said.
Yeah.
But what is kind of that process of learning? I mean, I know you're getting your hands dirty.
Yeah.
But then how are you kind of like getting better at it? You know.
Yeah. Well, it's all of the above. I mean, I read a lot of books on, you know, on kind of gardening, agriculture, permaculture, agroecology. You know, Twitter is a great resource. Going back to Twitter, you know, there's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge and experience, and so you have a question, or even if you post something and like people give you advice, you know, sometimes unbidden advice, but it's still helpful. You know, talking with friends. You know, I have a couple of colleagues who, you know,
your entire department.
There's at least like like 2 or 3 people in my department who have been growing, have been along this track much longer than me, right? And so, you know, throwing ideas off of them, getting their advice, you know, is really helpful as well.
That's
so all of the above. Yeah.
All of the above. Okay.
Yeah.
So for Homestay, what would you be, I guess, I guess someone who's maybe a technocrat, someone who's maybe more of the, you know, doomers and stuff like that. What is because I've seen a lot of people start getting land, you know, and everywhere around the world. So like, is that just what it is? Like, get something and then get your hands dirty kind of thing? Or is it like kind of see what your situation is and where you are in life and then kind of plan accordingly? Or obviously you got to do that anyway, but.
Yeah, I mean, so, I mean, at least from what I see on Twitter, it seems like a lot of people are getting land. You know, perhaps I have a biased sample or whatever.
Sure, maybe, yeah.
But, you know, so there's going to be a lot of issues that we're going to have to work out, and I think, you know, a pretty valid leftist critique of kind of the homesteading movement is that you're kind of just reinventing private property, right, and kind of this you know, accumulation. And we really need to be thinking more about like the commons or about more mutualistic. So like cooperatives, you know, community land trusts. And, you know, I think that's correct. But at the same time, you know, for a lot of people, you know, I think, you know, if I were to say like, should you wait until we have the ideal political structures to start learning how to grow food? No. Like if you have access to some land, you should just start growing some food. Like you need to build skill. It's not just kind of an ideal political structure. You need to have real skills. Right. It's, you know, so I kind of understand, you know, so I think it's good that people are getting land and starting to learn to grow food and stuff, but I don't think that's like the final solution, because that creates a lot of new problems, right? It creates
that's a panacea for other people.
It creates gentrification. You know, like if you talk to somebody like Neil Boyle-Dow, like he sees it all as gentrification and libs coming in and, you know, driving the locals out, and that's a real dynamic. That's you know, it's problematic.